Sam, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good, man.
Okay, this is an exciting episode for me because you were my former ifly instructor, indoor skydiving instructor.
Yeah. No. How long did we coach together? Like, about a year.
I think so, the better part of a year. Now, I was a pretty infrequent flyer, so
You were my
every six
most
weeks.
frequent client, though. Yeah.
What did you use? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying. Usually, I see somebody about once a month, and I'd see you about once a month, right?
Okay. Yeah, by the end, I think at one point you said I'm the most frequent infrequent flyer, but
Yeah. Well, a lot of
that
guys burn
guy,
themselves.
yeah.
They'll come like, "Oh, I'm coming every week. I'm coming every week," and then they'll do that for like 2 months, and then I'll never see them again.
That was the advantage I think that my brother and I had is that we started off at I think a pretty like a more reasonable pace,
Hmm.
and then yeah, because every like we were very excited in the beginning, but it was hard for us. It was hard for us, frankly, just to coordinate our schedules to find time to jump together. And it was, I think it was for the best. I think we did it for longer or continued to do it for longer as a result. But
Yeah, I get most people for about a year. Like even the people that are really committed to flying and only flying, I usually don't get them for much longer than a year. I think the
mm,
kids stay longer. Usually the kids, especially if they're younger and they don't have other hobbies, I'll get them for a couple years, and then they'll get old enough that the school gets more difficult or something, and then they find a cheaper, easier hobby to maintain. But most adult clients, they only stay with me for about a year.
what level do they max out at if they stay with you for the year?
Almost nobody goes beyond backfly.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, well, backfly is so difficult, and it's challenging just because of how you're viewing the instructor. I mean, you're on your back; it's awkward to communicate, and it's, as you know, incredibly difficult. So I lose almost everybody around backfly,
I,
nearly
I,
everybody.
so, so I checked, being an analyst myself, I checked the records. It took me 2.5 hours to pass backfly.
I'll admit you spent a good amount of time on backfly. I'll admit you spent a good amount of time on backfly.
Yeah. I just wanted to get it settled.
Yeah, well, it was those the over the feet well, the reverse over the feet that I think we spent the most amount of time on.
Yeah. Um, I got kind of stuck on that move. And I think I've got over 50 minutes of video of me just trying to go back and forth, back to the
I don't
front,
doubt it.
front to the
I
back.
don't doubt it. It is really hard though because it's a backwards transition, so you can't see where you're going. It's very difficult to do anyway. It's like one of the first ones that require a lot of commitment. Um,
Mm.
so even once you get past it, there's actually easier stuff once you get past it. It doesn't even escalate until you get to sit fly anyway.
Well, so I noticed I got stuck on the back to belly transition and on the belly to back transition, those transitions. And then at the same time, my brother got stuck on I don't know what you would call it, entry into sit fly.
Yeah, he was having trouble finding stability in the position so that we could progress, and that was his flexibility. So it was literally a body issue. It wasn't mental. He understood what was going on and he knew but when your body isn't letting you do it, it becomes very difficult, and you see that every now and then with people. Um,
I also thought part of it was during that time. I think my brother and I we were just going less and less frequently, and so
mhm.
I felt like every time we showed back up, I would always spend the first rotation just as a warm up to desperately try to get my bearings again. Um, I know my brother got a little bit more. He was a little bit more frustrated, and he would always want to jump right into it. Uh,
Yeah, and I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? Who wouldn't want to like just fucking nail it every time? Oh, can I curse? I probably shouldn't curse, right? I have a hard time not.
Fire away. This is an open forum.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah. No. But very much so, and it was interesting because he would spend his whole time like we would go right. So we would go and we would do our plan always was to do 20 minutes, and we would split it up 10 and 10 sessions. And my brother would spend really the entire time almost not skydiving, but trying to find the position. I don't know. Is that
Mhm.
a
No,
fair
that's
way to say it?
exactly it. And I wanted that for him too. Like I understood why he skipped that warm up because I mean, there is something about being challenged by something and feeling that block.
Yeah.
And everyone has it somewhere. It's just more fun when it isn't trying to find the position. When it's a dynamic move where you're moving and you can see some kind of progress. But when you're just trying to sit in the air and sit in that position or just find the stability, it can be incredibly frustrating. You just want to move on.
Hmm. Hmm. The new instructor, was it Daniel?
Hmm.
Um, we noticed, we both took notice, my brother and I, that he flew past us, like because he started, I think from nothing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and just did he, as a result of working there? I mean, did he just have more time? Is that?
It is more time. No matter who you are, instructors will progress more quickly
Mm,
because we always called it playtime. You guys don't have playtime. You're spending your money. It's a limited amount of time. We go in there and we mess around. And so when we're taking our classes, we're walking around in there, we're jumping around, we're trying to make our classes fun too. And so the wind becomes second nature in a different kind of way. So even when we're not practicing and we have this junk time in there that we're not doing anything, you're still building certain skills. So instructors, because of the nature of the training and the recreational time and actually doing your job, you can't compete with that with even the best coaching.
or I tried to put it towards the back of my head as much as possible, right? But like I knew I only had 10 minutes in there, and it goes by really fast. A 2 minute rotation, it's quick.
Flies.
Yeah,
Um,
literally.
yeah, I just realized the pun, and I regretted the decision to repeat myself.
um, okay, how did you end up at iFly Hollywood, and how did you end up coaching?
Well, I had a buddy that he started first. We both grew up in Virginia. He managed to get over to LA, and he wanted to have his day job while he was trying to be an actor. And he was applying at City Walk. He saw ifly, and he applied from scratch. And then after a couple of years, he was having a lot of fun, and because we were very close, he offered me the job. He was like, "Look, they have an open position for an instructor. Let me bring you over, and you can try it. I think you'd like it." And I was not strong enough for the physical test when I got there. The over the phone, Steven, the lead instructor at the time, he called me and he's like, "Can you do pull-ups?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can do pull-ups." And I hung up and realized I cannot do a single pull-up. So I went and I did the physical test. And I think just out of sheer adrenaline, I managed 5 pull-ups out of the 9 that I needed to be able to do. And so they just hired me on as customer service, and I learned how to fly using our recreational time. And within 6 months, they had another FITP, flight instructor training program, and I participated in that. And from there, I just I raised up my flight skills, my coaching skills from there.
And that's kind of, you were telling me, right? That's the general track of kind of, if you want to be an iFly instructor or an indoor skydiving instructor, you go kind of the customer service route first, and then that progresses to flying in the tunnel.
I think that's probably more normal for the Hollywood location. Um,
Mm,
because we are such a small location and we don't need very many instructors, oftentimes the people that are looking to be an instructor ahead of time and are dead set on it find the opening for customer service first. Um, and they kind of secure that spot ahead of time. It's like a cheat way to get your way in and get your foot in the door. So, like I was saying to you when we were talking about it, it's just a great way to make sure that you're being considered.
hmm.
But I don't know if that's true for a lot of other tunnels. I know that a lot of other tunnels they have one big FITP, 1 or 2 guys will fail, and they'll pass maybe 4 or 5 others, and they become instructors. And they don't know how to check anybody in or answer phone calls or anything like that, and they are very lucky because they no longer have that responsibility. Uh,
Okay.
Whereas if you're a customer service, they expect you to do both a little bit. Um,
All right. Once a customer service agent, always a customer service agent kind of thing.
Seems that way, yeah.
That's what it seems like talking to you and getting the opportunity to jump at a few different tunnels, is that there is a very wide range of how different tunnels are managed, even within the same company.
Yeah, well, I think that's where they're going, right? They want to homogenize everything and make it all the same. But for the longest time, it really was. each tunnel managing itself and being left to its own devices. And Hollywood being the kind of tunnel that it is, it's always sort of outside the norm anyway. The technology is different, the location is wildly different. And so we simply can't operate exactly the way that other iflies do. Um, but you'll notice, I think, even more so as the years go by, they're going to be much more similar. Probably not Hollywood, but if you go to Maryland or if you go to Seattle, you're going to know what to expect, and then you're going to go to Hollywood and be very, very, very confused.
What makes the Hollywood location different?
Oh, well, it is weaker. It's a weaker tunnel and it's smaller. The shape is different. So the quality of the wind suffers in a couple different ways. So because it expands as you go up, the wind diffuses. And so the modern tunnels now, that wind is going to be even, whether or not you're at the top or at the bottom, it'll be relatively the same strength. And you can complete the same maneuvers. But with ours, what goes up eventually will have to come down. It becomes like this 3D trampoline as opposed to a solid column of air. And
That
our doors
was
don't open.
Oh, your door. What do you mean the doors
That's
don't
probably,
open?
sorry, I just realized that was probably the biggest difference is our doors don't open without shutting the tunnel off. So whereas a skydiver could
Oh,
come in, fly a little bit of their time, open the doors, go to the bathroom real fast, and then come back in, no bathroom break, no bathroom breaks at all.
I didn't realize that we were committed to
Yeah,
our
yeah.
session when we.
Once the doors are closed, they're not going to open until we're done. And you have to really throw a fit to get us to open them up.
Okay, okay, fair enough. Yeah, that was the biggest difference that I noticed when I got to fly at the Oceanside location versus Hollywood. Right, Oceanside is kind of the more, I guess, traditional or normal now cylinder tunnel is what I would call it, vertical, and then the Hollywood one is like a funnel almost.
Mhm.
And that's something that I always struggled with. I do think I've got some footage somewhere of my brother and I kind of doing flying those box formations, and we both really struggled with maintaining our altitude at the higher levels, just kind of expanding the body. I
You know,
I think that's the one time we crashed too.
I know that you nearly crashed with me. I remember there was one time I let you guys do it, and they actually took me aside later, and they're like, "You need to clean those boys up." Like,
Oh, really?
yeah, I got a little bit in trouble, but you know what? Like, I've always enjoyed letting people make a few mistakes here and there because I think you can learn from them. And I guess it just we were overextending ourselves, all three of us, with what we were doing at the time.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I think that you guys improved very quickly the next times that we did it. And I imagine with more space and more powerful wind, or at least more consistent wind, it was easier and
That's
more.
very generous. I know that because you always kept things pretty tight, pretty structured in terms of the this the safety and the progression. And I did feel though we crossed a midpoint where you got a little bit looser, and you must have gotten a little bit too loose.
Maybe, yeah. And I
Don't know
think
what.
the danger for every coach and instructor is trying to find where the line is between allowing you guys to push yourselves, but not too far, so that it's some kind of permanent injury could occur. And I really feel that if you've messed up during a transition or doing something like that, you deserve the chance to try to recover from it. Because
Hmm.
that's a big part of learning as well. If I'm holding you to the net or grabbing onto you the moment that you mess up, what chance do you have to learn how to protect yourself when someone's not there, or if you're in the sky and you tumble or something like that?
I noticed kind of watching our footage back and forth that especially with me in those transitions, you're constantly like you could physically see yourself making the call of do I jump in and help him or do I not? And
Yeah.
so
Well, especially for the back one, you could hit the back of your head, and so that's really what I would worry about. Is I really didn't want you to hit the back of your head or hit your neck at all, because that could be
mm,
very dangerous. But with the front ones, you see where you're going. You can have your hands out in front of you to block the wall. But for the back one, it really can be quite scary if you whiplash into the net or anything.
well that was another thing though that you kind of mentioned to me, and I didn't know we were a couple hours into flying at this point, and then I didn't realize that the helmets were not like safety rated or yeah, okay.
Well, especially the G3s. Yeah, the G3s they're I call them a vanity helmet, because it's just a shell with the padding, and if you look in the helmet, you're going to see that it says warning. This is not a safety helmet. However, the G4s are they've got some kind of rating. I don't know exactly what, but they do have some kind of safety rating.
Gotcha. And so that's just, but it's always nice flying with the helmet. And I think I actually never flew with the goggles just to have like the wind out of your face and not disrupting. You can kind of focus on what's going on.
That used to be a rite of passage for the instructors. When I started, the rule was you bought your own helmet. And so I think I did my first few months in the student helmet with the bird's eye goggles, and I felt like an amateur because everybody else had their own helmet. They had the G3, and they all looked like badasses. And I walked out, and I felt like I was like this weenie coming up, like, "Okay, guys, let's go fly." Um, but it's kind of a rite of passage as well, where you kind of earned your helmet. Now they just assign you the helmet, and you give it back when you're done. But it was a little bit more wild back then with everything.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. You always kind of talk about that you were at ifly long enough to kind of really see the arc of structure in place. And in the early days, I think you refer to it as the wild wild west.
That's how we always referred to it. Yeah, I started during the transition to the homogenization and the focus on safety and optics, right? So I was there to see what it was, but I didn't experience the most wild of it, the least structured of it. I was just there to see the old guys talk about it and to see what it was. But the way I was taught was more towards the way it is now. In fact, they even called my FITP Camp Cupcake because it wasn't as intense as what everyone before me had to do. Granted, the techniques were more sound and it required less of the instructor because of that. But still, they like to talk about how we aren't the same cut as what it was.
I just get the vibe across the board in skydiving that is an element of it that
Yeah, I
when
think
it,
with any
yeah,
sport it is.
fair enough.
Yeah.
But the iFly world, the way you kind of told me these stories, it was always interesting to see how the process changed, almost like in response to incidences or whatever. The one that comes to mind for me was the procedure for barrel rolls. I think changed in our time, or the way that you taught me was not the way that you learned. I think.
Yeah. So um, I learned years and years. I think it was like 6, 7 years before you came in. I learned how to teach barrel rolls, and we had two separate procedures that you could use, and one of which would have been like holding someone's hands and rotating them, and that person initiating the spin with their leg, or
Mm.
you would have them initiate the spin with their hand, which is how I learned how to do it. Somewhere along the line, I do not remember when they got rid of the initiating that spin with your hand. It was discovered that it's safer to initiate it with your leg. Um, and I found that that was a more difficult way to learn it. So I guess I ignored that and never digested that safety advice and just kept doing it. And I'll be honest, you learn barrel rolls very, very quickly. And I got yelled at for that as well. Yeah.
Wait, so I didn't realize that you were under this amount of scrutiny. Would you guys review like my jumps or oh
Well,
that's a
everybody,
firm yes.
no, yeah,
Yeah.
we review everybody's though. I mean, it
Okay.
would be irresponsible for us not to be double checking each other. And then we
Hmm.
also have, we have our regional lead who's checking our videos every month to make sure that we're up to cut and doing everything appropriately. And I'll admit that we're not always doing everything appropriately, which is why we have our training every month, and we do all that just to make sure that we don't fall into old habits or we don't make little mistakes with you guys because we do care about you. Um, and if we're doing something dangerous, we should stop. Um, though some of us are stubborn in our ways for teaching, and we forget or we choose to not remember. Maybe I don't know.
Okay, so staying on the barrel rolls for a minute though. This is something that I found that my brother and I but were both discussing, I think independent of you, is that it's surprising. It makes a lot of sense when we thought through it, but barrel rolls skydiving is one of the, I think, first real skills you learn. Back in my day, it was jump 8. So
Mhm.
I wasn't even through AFF yet, and they're like, "Yeah, throw a barrel roll," because, and now that I think about it, because there's no consequence in the air to just flipping, versus in a tunnel, you are driving yourself forward potentially
Yeah.
really fast.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a limited amount of space and you mess up the barrel roll, one of two things are probably going to happen. You're either going to shoot forward, or you're going to shoot backwards. And I think, when you and I were learning the barrel rolls, we talked about the safety brief, and then I think I would have said, "Hey, you could shoot back. You're going to hurt your feet, and that would suck, but it's not the worst thing in the world." Or you could shoot forward, and we could just lose Eric entirely. Um,
Right.
so, because those walls are unyielding, you have to be ready for where you're going to go in that limited amount of space.
Those are the, because now I love reviewing the hours of footage that I have. The only two times that I saw you really move in almost a, with perhaps potentially a panic or at least a lot of speed. One was when my brother did a barrel roll, and just, I think he really only got halfway around and was like a
Yeah.
sail and just right into the side of the wall, um, which pitched him around pretty far too.
Yeah, I actually remember this and I remember it was on one of your shorts that I saw it,
Yeah.
and there's even a comment on there because like in your voiceover it says something like, "Oh, he really gets thrown," and me remembering being there, I'm like, "Yeah, he really got thrown," but the comment is like, that's not a big deal, like that looks stupid," and I remember thinking like, "You have no idea." Um, because you really can be hit with a lot of force. And I think that's probably, other than diving forward towards your head, being on your side and having the wind just push you towards the wall like that. It's a lot of surface area to hit the wall with.
Hmm.
And a lot of people have gotten hurt. I mean, instructors, I mean, we learn with a lot less of that safety involved, especially back when I learned, I guess, but it's probably not that way anymore. Um, but we taught ourselves a lot of that stuff. And I remember really slamming my butt and my back and my legs against the wall a lot while learning that kind of stuff.
Now, see, that gets tricky because on the one side, right, that I would argue really helps you learn. Like, so as long as
Mhm.
you don't get hurt, you're learning a lot. Versus like with Grant and I, my brother, we were, sometimes I felt like by the nature of just being customers, like we're held back on a leash a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, I mean,
Um, oh, go ahead.
you mentioned Daniel, the new instructor, at one
Mhm.
point, and how quickly he learned. And a big part of that is, I mean, granted, we did our best to keep him safe, but I think your barrel roll brief, the describing how it was going to work and how it was going to go down, it probably took us 10 minutes to go through all that before we got in the tunnel. For Daniel, I think I told him, listen, I'm going to hold on to you for the first couple, and I want you to try to put your nose inside of your butthole, and I want you to commit completely. And then we went into the tunnel and he tried to put his nose in his butthole and he just did it. Like it happened immediately. And it's that level of commitment, um, and being allowed to do it's a trial by fire, right? And if
Right.
you make it, you learn quickly.
Hmm. Hmm. No, I can understand the difference there, and that's something that you touched on, a point though that I think I probably struggled the entire time with, is that the moves, I felt like I needed to commit more across the board with all my moves.
A lot of people have the issue with commitment. I've done a small amount of extreme sports my entire life. I did skateboarding when I was younger, and now I've done this. I The only times I've gotten hurt are when I half-ass it or only put so much
Mm.
effort in, or at the very least, I'm not committed to the movement. Because if you're not, you wind up being stuck halfway, and that's usually the most dangerous aspect of that.
Now, okay, when you learned to be an instructor, what aspect of flying did they teach you during the introductory, or the, what is the pilot program or the instructor program?
Flight instructor training program, the FITP.
Okay.
They don't really. They teach you how to walk. They teach you how to run, and they teach you how to get up after you've tripped and fallen or been knocked over. That is hands down the only thing that matters. In fact, I don't think you need to be able to fly terribly well in order to be a good instructor, because the whole point is to be on your feet.
Mm.
So they teach you how to walk quickly, how to get to someone who's flown away from you, and if somehow you've been knocked down, how to get back up fast enough that you can help the person you're there to keep safe.
And that is because the overwhelming majority of people do not fall into the camp that my brother and I did, where we're learning to free fly, but are doing it for like one time and one time only. And I saw you very much had them go through a very specific routine, or like almost like I don't, I'm hesitant to say ride, given the fact that it's what we're doing, but
Yeah.
it seemed like a very well coordinated. I guess, like, how would you describe the experience for the one time person?
From the customer's perspective,
Yeah, yeah.
I would call it. I think what ifly calls it is an experience, and I think that's accurate.
Hmm.
There's times when we're really busy, and you're just kind of getting people through their classes and through the flight experience that you feel almost like a carnival ride operator, but you really are. You're providing an experience, and it's just enough that they understand what they're doing. If they do well, they can appreciate it, and then they're done. Excuse me.
Right. And the whole premise, I think, it's like a 1 minute tunnel time, and really, like, I guess how I would describe it for those who are listening, is you would be standing vertically in the tunnel, and they're trying to be on their belly, just be stable,
Yeah,
and
like that. So I
there you
guess like
go.
that. Yeah.
There you go. And you're very much, like, in most cases, have your arm like locked around their waist, holding them on. It's
Yeah, so that is called it's called controllability. So there's different stances you take with the flyer, and controllability is it's the most controlled position. Where you've got one arm around their waist and the other about at their shoulder. I guess it'd be kind of like that, right? Um, and you have them there until they're stable enough that you can back off a little bit. You might put your arm under them and have their knee or something like that, and eventually the goal is to be able to let go of them. You want them to do well, and you want them to be able to do it by yourself. You feel like you did a good job too, if they're doing well.
hmm hmm
And it would be typically it's 2 1 minute turns, so they get one shot to understand it a little, and then another shot to do it in earnest. That's how I've always thought of it.
Yeah. And it seems like most people end up in some form of like kind of comfortable hovering is what I would say from kind of observing it.
Yeah, on average, most people do well. There's very few people that do absolutely terribly. I mean,
Yeah.
and no one's trying to do poorly. But I would say most people they get it. It's rarely do they spend the whole minute flying on their own. But I'm always happy when I'm able to let go for a few seconds and then just check in with them every couple of seconds and then let go again. And I wouldn't expect someone to be able to do the whole minute independently. It's a very difficult sport. I mean, as well as I do. Um, I'm very happy if I'm able to let go just a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's so unnatural too. Is part of the thing, and it's also counterintuitive, right? Because the pressure is coming downward, right? Whereas almost always when you're doing a sport, it's like like I'm thinking of like rock climbing or something. It's gravity dependent, and so
Hmm.
you can think like, oh, if I do pull ups or train in a gym, you can take that and transfer it outside. If I wasn't in the tunnel practicing sit fly, like,
Hmm.
I was really struggling to find something that would emulate it, out in the real
Yeah,
world.
I really don't know what you could do that would be directly applicable to those skills. What I have found is that people that are skiers or snowboarders or skateboarders, it's a similar type of understanding for the balance. It's not the same kind of balance, but those people that participate in those sports typically do it well. Like to bring that new instructor in again, he was a big time surfer, and I know that he likes to hit the slopes. And I think that really attributed to how quickly he learned and progressed.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Okay. And then, but you really liked the first timers, right? Like, kind of bringing people through for the first time. I always got the vibe you got a real kick out of that.
Well, I'm a bit of a hermit socially, and you spend about an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours with these people. And so iFly was a little bit of me getting a chance to be social when I'm normally not. So you spend a half hour talking to them, a half hour getting them all geared up, and then you spend a half hour with everybody taking turns. And for me, it's I love teaching more than I love flying.
Mm.
So yeah, I love the first timers. Honestly, I think it was my favorite when guys like you would come in.
Oh,
We have a rapport and we have a goal, and we can talk about complex techniques and skills, and talk about what works and why that might work and what might not work. Um, but to be able to have someone that's not interested in a big commitment for that kind of stuff, but still do well and still understand it and make a connection in that way, yeah, it's great.
that's the interesting thing about indoor skydiving and like ifly, right? So like I'm midway along, if you will, or roughly this journey of, I guess I would phrase it as the four types of flying: belly, back, sit, and head fly. Is that
Mhm.
a good way to characterize it?
Yeah, I know a lot of people will they will call sit fly head up, because ultimately when you've mastered it, it does no longer look so much like you're sitting in the sky as much as you're upright, and you're using your momentum, that centrifugal force, to really allow you to be straight up and down. And with the new tunnels, they're powerful enough that you don't need the extra surface area from that like thrown position.
Mm.
But I think that's absolutely accurate. You go into any iFly and you'll see them with either mannequins or illustrations that are showing those four positions. And everything is sort of taught in terms of learning each position and moving on. You eventually combine them, but I'd say you're right.
Sam, as we're talking, I'm realizing you need to be an ifly spokesperson.
I don't think they want me to be a spokesperson. I mean, like, I, I definitely don't have the best safety rating. I'm not the most corporate guy in the world. I do have a passion for teaching, and I really
Yeah.
love that iFly gave me the tools to do that. But I doubt that they would want me to be a spokesperson.
But you're selling yourself short on the safety rating there, because when I went to what not that anybody's unsafe, but I didn't realize that not all iFlies are corporate locations. And
Right, like
so
oceans.
like Oceanside, yeah. And so my brother and I, we got the chance to fly in Oceanside because we were going down to visit my parents. And they had, I mean, we both talked to the instructor for a couple minutes, and she was like, oh, okay, well, why don't you just try sit flying? And it was like I hadn't passed back flying yet. There were no rules, and I was like, well, let's give it a shot. So
Yeah, and you go to other tunnels that aren't under the iFly umbrella at all. Like franchises have some kind of responsibility. I'm not exactly sure to what degree, but they have some responsibility to teach like we teach and to enforce some
mm,
of the rules that we have. You go to the other tunnels using different technology that aren't franchises, and I know that a lot of them are more fast and loose with how they do it. And a lot of skydivers and people that are tunnel flyers appreciate that level of freedom. Me, because I like the rigidity and the structure of teaching, and it allows me to sort of force us to look at what we're doing right now. I appreciate the structure, but I can see why somebody would also want to be able to do what they want to do.
well, that's also, there's a couple of glaring big differences from what I experienced between Oceanside and Hollywood. And the Hollywood one, your tunnel or my local tunnel, doesn't allow independent or third party coaches.
It is very difficult to be qualified as one. When
Gotcha.
I started, it was much easier. When I started, and I think it's a bit of a shame. Like if you got into it, you would see that there is a huge culture of people that are upset with iFly, about the way that that's gone down, about withholding the ability to coach.
Mm.
Um, and I don't know too much about it. I never entered into that aspect of the culture, so I don't think I should probably speak on it. But what I will say is that coming up as when I was customer service there and I was driving the machine, I would get the chance to have um, hours of watching these coaches doing what they're doing with skydivers. So I'd not only be able to see the instructors that are there showing me the techniques, but I'd also see several different very experienced coaches with very unique coaching styles, and I could see all of what works. You can see what doesn't work. You can kind of fantasize about what you would do in their position, and I think a lot of instructors don't get exposed to that anymore at iFly, and so I think a lot of the coaching reflects that. Not to say that anybody's coaching poorly, but I do think that when you have exposure to to many different styles. It drives innovation, and it drives the passion of it too. It drives the culture of it as well. So when I became an instructor, I was able to say like, oh, okay, now I can try to do what these guys are doing. Um, so yeah, it's a shame, but at the same time, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, as you pointed out, like I'm very far from that world, but I will say I'm empathetic coming from a corporate background of I'm sure they're trying to in, like implement some sort of structure or standardization, but at the same time, the catch 22, right, is that these coaches are probably some of the most passionate, or definitely some of the most passionate and probably advanced people out there flying, whether or not they've been taught through the ifly like funnel seems to
Right.
be.
And I think that's what they want is they want the utmost amount of control of their own space.
Mhm.
Uh, and you can't have that if you're allowing people to do their own thing in there.
But that was an option at the Hollywood Tunnel just because there's so many first timers. Or I think for long periods of time, my brother and I were we your only like long-term students? Or
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think one of the things that we call the Hollywood Tunnel is a first time flyer factory. It's
Mm,
very difficult to park there. I mean, you had to do the valet and come in and out, and you have to get your certificate. It's not easy for someone who's looking to come every 2 weeks to book an easy time to fly, to park there, and to get there. So we don't see many skydivers. We don't see a lot of people that are trying to do competitions or trying to really hone advanced skills. Combined with the technology being older and a more confining tunnel, they don't want to be there. And
mm.
I get that. I totally understand that. It's disappointing to me because I don't get to see them anymore. Um, but also, it's a lot of work. So, at the same time, I didn't have to work anywhere near as hard, right?
Okay, okay, fair enough. Well, that was interesting because one of the early we jumped once or twice, and then my brother went and checked out the Ontario tunnel, which is kind of a third tunnel that's near us. And given the LA traffic was roughly kind of the same distance and time, I didn't realize though, or what my brother found out is there was nobody at the time. I don't know if that's changed at the Ontario place that could even teach backfly.
Yeah. When instructors become instructors, they're able to teach belly fly. It used to be you came out of FITP with belly fly and back fly, but that's a lot to teach somebody in a month. Um,
Sure.
so they drew it back over time to be just belly fly. And then you need somebody there that's able to teach as well. And I think that was the issue is that between the pandemic uh, and people leaving, they just didn't. Not only did they have difficulty finding qualified instructors for the advanced techniques, you need someone even more qualified to be able to teach people how to do that. And I don't think they had either. They needed to get like the regional instructor to come down and take time out of his busy schedule to take these young guys and teach them those skills. So I think that was the difficulty, if I remember correctly.
Lots always happening within this indoor skydiving world is what I'm noticing.
Yeah,
Okay, I want to make sure we have enough time to talk about your YouTube channel, S
yeah,
Heiney
yeah,
Animations.
yeah.
Yeah, describe like what it is, what you do. Yeah.
Well, right now I feel like I'm still learning. Right during the pandemic, I wanted something to be able to do with my time. When I was 18, I went to an acting conservatory because I really thought I wanted to be an actor. And over time, I realized that I just really like telling stories and being a part of telling stories. Um, And I think any nerd really says at one point, "Oh, I want to be the guy making the video games I'm playing." So I played with Blender, which is a freeware program that you can model and texture models, and you can create rigs to animate those models. And after a while, I realized how difficult that alone was, and I thought, well, how fun would it be to write little scripts and make little stories? Um, and so that became my goal is to just, make little videos and post them and eventually get good enough that maybe I would actually entertain myself with these terrible little videos. Um, and I've got a weird sense of humor. I hope they're funny when people watch them, but it's just a way for me to be able to express myself and try to improve at the stuff that I wish that I was good at.
Yeah, and like I would almost describe them as 3 to 4 minute, kind of skits or shorts along those lines, and they very much remind me of the movie Shrek. Um,
Yeah,
I,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay,
Yeah, well, I
I,
remember we had the DVD for Shrek when I was a kid. I think I was like 8 or 9 when we were watching them. And my grandmother absolutely just fucking adored Shrek. Like I remember we had a waffle party for Shrek where the entire time, I think every 25 minutes, she would just scream, "We're making waffles!" Um, and we'd watch the DVD extras of these models as they were, how most videos have outtakes for like
mhm.
Jackie Chan movies. They do the outtakes at the end. This DVD extra had the 3D models and the rigs messing up or whatever there was happening. And I remember I found that fascinating,
Mm.
absolutely fascinating to see what it took to make these 3D things like Toy Story and Shrek.
And so that's interesting because it seems like you're coming at it from multiple directions, right? You got to learn like the modeling, there's the computer aspect of it, and there's the storytelling.
Hmm. Yeah, I play the modeling and the texturing and the rigging, all that. I play it pretty fast and loose. I think if I
Okay.
was smarter, I would download pre-made models, pre-made textures, and there are programs that allow you to rig those models. But I don't know. I'm a little particular, and I want to be able to learn how to do it myself, and I want those characters to reflect my taste and my idea as much as possible. So I do put the work in to try to make them myself. But as a result, I've got like what 5 videos on there, and they're nowhere near the amount of content that I wish I could push out. But and then I do the script. Yeah.
So okay, this is something that I've noticed as I've now talked to two or three what I would consider like true artists on this podcast, and the common theme is that they struggle so much to put out the content because it just takes so long, and it seems like you're no exception of the timeline for these things.
Oh yeah, well, like in an ideal world, I'd be able to put out like an hour of videos a week. I don't know if the videos are good, but I don't know if the ideas for the videos are good, but I have enough ideas to fill an hour every week. So I wish that I could do that, just in order to learn more, because the more you do, the more you learn. But as it is, it takes so much to do even 3 minutes.
Well, so okay, right, because you were there at ifly where when I started recording myself, and then kind of started this indoor skydiving channel on the side, and this is something that I always felt like distinguished my version from yours, is that I just had the ability to I would have 20 minutes of tape and I could cut 15 seconds and just voice over them, and then just okay, there goes another one. It just doesn't seem like that's possible in your format.
No, and maybe there. I look at other YouTube videos that are doing a lot of other things with animation, and it seems like you either scale back the animation so that you can scale up the amount of content, or you scale back how much you're doing so that you can try to have quality. And I'm still trying to
Mm.
figure out exactly what that balance is. Um, I'm certain that I'm putting too much work into the quality of the animation and the quality of the models compared to what I want to put out. Um, but you get obsessive, right? Like I'm sure that you spend a lot of time trying to make something perfect that people might not notice, right? And it seems important at the time, and then you watch your video and you're like, I probably didn't have to put detail in the kneecaps of this little goblin because no one's looking. Um, but you get obsessed. That's,
Yeah, I completely understand. I know how it goes. So, like, because you're spending, it's interesting to hear how much time you have to spend on the animation versus necessarily like the story aspect of it. It seems like that's really by just like almost like by the nature of the beast. It just takes a long time to animate these things.
yeah, yeah.
The as Yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead.
my bad. No, no, I don't know why I interrupted you at all. I think I just like doing it. I don't know.
It's all good. It's hard because I think it would be so much better to be able to do this in person. I mean, there's the advantage is we can do it across country, so there's that we got
That's
going
fair.
for us.
Yeah.
But here's my thought process, and this is one of the things that I liked, kind of staying on that Shrek reference. And I don't know which movie it was. Maybe you know which one. I think it was one of the, because they made so many of those movies, right? But there at one point there was like either the town was on fire or like a goblin came to the town, and everybody ran out of one Starbucks and across the street into another Starbucks.
That
Do
sounds
you?
funny, but I don't recall it either.
Okay, okay. That's the scene I remember. And what I liked about that, what I always liked about the Shrek movies is that you could pluck out these small segments of like social commentary from that
Mhm.
aspect of it. Now, not to give you a suggestion, but
Suggest away.
I feel like your content is prime, and plus like your life experience would be prime for just these like shorter, more like social commentary through the Shrek style.
Hmm. Well, I think I would have to be much smarter to be able to actually apply some kind of social commentary. Like I'm not a very aware person. I'm fairly aloof. I don't really pay attention to what's further than right in front of me. So like I go on like Reddit or my Google News feed and I see all this stuff happening, and I kind of allow them to form my opinions for me. I just listen to the smartest sounding guy, and then the next time, I think Joe Rogan actually has a bit on that where like every time you hear something explained, as long as it's explained well, like that's just what you think is the case. Like every time you hear a good explanation, you're just like, oh well, then now that's what I believe. Um, so like I don't know how much commentary I have. I know that I want to make people laugh, but and I think social commentary is a great way to go through doing that. And I'm not sure how much I have to say in that regard. I'd like to.
I think you're selling yourself short, but I understand the power of charisma within the social commentary sphere. I
Yeah.
guess along those lines. Okay, okay, really cool. Are you hoping to like to progress and make more films, and like I don't know, what are you thinking about this?
Yeah, in an ideal world, so I've got half of my animations are kind of all unrelated, and then the other half are all about this little green goblin who I keep changing the model on. And my goal right now is to create one full 20-minute, 25-minute pilot with the goblin, hopefully create some kind of sizzler that shows the potential for a season of a show. Um, and I'd like to be able to create something that I could show somebody and be like, huh, you like it? You want to buy it? Like I'd really love to be able to just have something that would be a long format story that I could tell. Because that's I grew up on these long format fantasy series that have 27 books all about dragons and elves and shit. Um, and
This
usually they don't really have a lot to say. They just you stab an elf and in a gigantic battle, and that's compelling, man. You throw a fireball at a castle, and that's compelling. That's cool shit.
Okay, okay, I like it. I like it. This is an aspect of not only yourself but the other instructors that you worked with at ifly were all kind of doing their like I don't know, creative pursuit into the world, into the professional world of cinema, photography, videography. I don't know how you would you frame it? You would probably do a better job of framing it than me.
Well, a lot of the guys that do iFly is because it's such a flexible thing. Excuse me. It's very very flexible. So I know that my buddy that got me hired, he was trying to be an actor,
Mhm.
and he's a successful actor because it's easy to switch shifts. It's easy to miss a shift if necessary, so that you can pursue something else. So, not all of us are actors. I'm trying to be a digital filmmaker, and you've got Joe Chacon, who's right now he's making a lot of short films, and he's an actor himself. We had a few guys that were trying to be comedians. Everybody's trying to pursue something, and it's Hollywood, right? Like the town is Hollywood. It's the place to be to have aspirations beyond your means. And iFly was a decent place to get a decent paycheck and still pursue that.
What I found most interesting is that, well, first of all, it was really cool to see everybody was really excited when I started my YouTube channel. Like I just don't have anybody else who I'm around other than like a passing interest in social media. And so it was really cool that I did not expect the energy out of everybody, all the instructors, which was a lot of
That
fun.
shit is fun. It's really fun.
Yeah. But it's something that I noticed, and it sounds like you're kind of carrying that same thought process almost, is like, hey, I'm going to use YouTube to work out the kinks and then to ultimately go towards a more traditional media outlet.
Well, it's definitely the dream, right? Like if I had to just stay on YouTube, I'd be perfectly happy with that. Just because I do like telling stories and making stories, and that's worth it just on its own. But if we were to talk about like your ultimate fantasy of it, yeah, of course I'd want it to
Mm.
be on a television screen, and that would be so fucking cool.
That's but I guess see, like that, almost that idea is so foreign to me because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go down this YouTube path, and really, like, that's almost the end state. Which is interesting to see that rift still exists, or that divide in thinking.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you can have a lot of success on YouTube. And I think the format that you're doing is one that you can be very, very successful at. You know, YouTube has a huge amount of people viewing their content, and you have a niche that not lot of people are doing. I watch a lot of DIY stuff, and I constantly see comments under these videos for projects or for niche little things where people say, "Oh, I don't even do this. I just like watching someone who's an expert talk about it or watch someone learn." So you don't even need to be an indoor skydiver or skydiver at all to appreciate your videos. And I think the comments on your videos kind of reflect that as well, because there's so many people that say, "Oh, what is this?" Or "Oh, this
Hmm.
is me," or "Where do I do this?" And very few of them, maybe like 10 or 15% of the comments that I've seen on your videos will say, "Oh, I'm also doing that," or "I'm also a skydiver and I do that as well." You know, and I think it's, um, I, what you're doing right now, I think, is a great, YouTube is a great place for it, you know, whereas
Mm.
the people posting animations and short films on YouTube, I mean, I don't watch animation on YouTube. I want people to watch my animations. I'm not out here to watch, you know, I watch animations on Cartoon Network. I watch animations that are
I
movies,
see.
you know what I mean? And like,
Sure.
even on Reddit, you know, I'll post my stuff on Reddit and I go onto the animation subreddit and I'm realizing like, oh, if I'm not going out of my way when I'm on the short film or the short animation subreddit to watch other people's stuff, who's watching mine? You know what I mean? So
I
like,
see.
I think that's the big thing with film and animation.
Gotcha. There's really the audience base is there in the more.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Cool. Um, so do you have any like future projects, upcoming projects for this year that you're thinking about working on, or?
Well, so far on my YouTube channel, I have three, I call them test videos. They're essentially the individual scenes that are going to be knit together into that pilot that we talked about.
Mhm.
I'm dealing with the move right now, so I'd like to finish the last one of that, and then I'm going to be able to complete my first section of that pilot. And then beyond that, I'd like to be able to continue working on that. I should have three more 10-minute chunks similar to what I've done already, and then it would be the Sizzler. Beyond that, I'm not really sure exactly where that's going to go, or it's exhausting to work on the same kind of thing all the time. So maybe I'd like to make maybe something that's more about music, an animated sort of music video. You know when you listen to music by yourself and you kind of have some kind of little situation playing out.
Sure,
Uh,
sure.
I feel like a lot of people do that. Where they create little music videos in their head. I'm realizing now that I have the technology to bring one of those to life. So I figured I'd pick a fun song and maybe do like a 2-minute animation that's to music, to
Okay.
sort of exercise that.
Wow. That'll be cool. A long road ahead, but an exciting one.
Hmm.
I love it. Wow. All right, Sam. Hey, it was great talking to you. Great catching
Yeah,
up.
that was
Um,
definitely good seeing you.
And I also wanted to make sure, I wanted to thank you. I know you're no longer at ifly Hollywood, but I wanted to thank you for being our coach. My brother and I really appreciated it. You were just an amazing guy, a really fun person to fly with, and I
I
can't wait till we jump in a tunnel again.
I hope we get the chance, and hopefully we can do it as peers. I know that the amount of time that we spent together, it was a parasocial relationship, but I'd like to think that we did become friends over that amount of time. I really, really appreciated you guys coming in as well.